Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the podcast Strikes Back. My name is George and you're listening to our Alien Covenant review. It's here, happy days, and I'm with the boys to talk it out. Connor.
Hello.
And Benny.
Hello.
We literally just got back from the cinema. Extremely exciting stuff. Finally saw Alien Covenant. Guys, how was it? Did you have a good time? Did it meet your expectations?
This has been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
The media hype kind of leading up to this has been huge.
It's one of those ones. Let's just release a minute clip every day until it comes out.
And I got really tired of the media coming up to this and the advertising and the clips and all that.
Yeah, so much so that you boycotted that little pre-clip they did.
Yeah.
With Fassbender and Noomi Rapace.
I caved and I watched it.
Oh, okay. But you tried.
I tried, and I got fairly annoyed with how much it was kind of pounding us. But now that I've seen the film, I've got to say it was actually quite clever what they did and how they did it.
There's a lot of stuff in here that isn't in the marketing materials. I was genuinely surprised by a lot of this film.
Yeah, and a lot of some of the marketing material that isn't in the actual film.
Yeah.
That was the part that was really interesting to me, is that they had released, and it makes sense why they were so kind of, hitting you over the head with this marketing material, is because they wanted you to have a little bit of backstory to coming into this film.
I don't like that stuff. I'm not into this whole multimedia movie making. Just give me a movie.
Yeah, but you're a pleb, so...
Okay.
Whoa. No, I'm with you. When the TIE Fighter didn't rock up in Rogue One.
Oh, boy.
That was a moment that took me out of the film.
But I don't think that was intentional. I don't think that was intentional marketing that was meant to get you hyped up for it, and then they yanked it out on
That'd
purpose.
Be funny if it was.
Let's not go into Rogue One.
I feel like that was failed marketing.
Yeah.
Whereas this, having seen it, I kind of appreciate why they hyped it so much, which they tried to do with Prometheus.
And they definitely did an extremely good job. I thought they hyped... Prometheus is one of those hyped films of 2012.
No, but I mean,
I'd say way more hyped than Alien Covenant amongst the general audience.
Yeah. No, more in the fact that with those little videos of Guy Pearce, I didn't think that they really meshed well. That was where I found issue with that. But should we actually get into the actual film? Maybe? Yeah.
Seriously,
that's
man.
What we're actually
talking
here
about ads and stuff.
I really enjoyed this film. I thought that it was an interesting blend between a traditional Alien film and kind of what we got with Prometheus. Mm-hmm. I mean, straight off the bat, the visuals are still there. This, because Ridley Scott's a fucking amazing filmmaker in regards to visuals.
That's his thing.
Yeah, and he's really good at it. So the music and the look of the film and the tone, I even would go so far as to say the tone of the film was really some of the highlights for me.
What do you think, Benny?
My expectations were pretty all over the shop for this. I can't not get excited for an Alien film, I guess. But obviously, if you've listened to our Prometheus review, I was very disappointed by that. And this threatened to potentially be more of the same. On the whole, I quite enjoyed this one. I've definitely got some quibbles that we'll get into. But looked great, sounded great, cool cast. It had Xenomorphs, so that's already one up from Prometheus. Overall enjoyed it quite a lot.
Yeah, same with me. I think it's pretty much a 50% dosage of Prometheus and Alien. It hits a lot of those tropes of both franchises. Not that Prometheus is a franchise, but it hit the same sort of beats, particularly with Alien. And overall, I love this film. I thought it was way better than Prometheus. I think it was kind of like what I really wanted, which was Prometheus 2.0. And I think it did it really well.
So when you kind of compare it to Prometheus, for me, that's like trying to compare Alien and Predator. They're two different films with different tones and they try to achieve two different things. They're both, kind of monster films and have horror aspects to them. But they're not, it's hard to say which one is better in terms of, because they're such different films. If you know what I mean. I'd say Alien is better.
I think if you think about what the intent is of the film and does it execute that intent?
My point was Alien and Alien Covenant are completely different than Prometheus. for me in the feel, the tone, what they set out to achieve. And I know we've already had this discussion about you didn't feel like you got answers from Prometheus. For me, that was the entire part of the point of the film. So for me, that movie kind of achieved what it meant to achieve. This movie, I feel like it just felt different. So I don't know if I'd say one is better than the other.
Well, this one's definitely better than Prometheus, so we can settle that now. But from what it looked like from all the trailers and stuff, he's shaking his head. From the trailers, we all got the impression that this looked like a bit of a course correction from Ridley after Prometheus, because it was very mixed reception to that one. And having seen it, I think that's definitely what they were trying to do, is they took some of the ideas they had in Prometheus and the aesthetic and everything, and then just tried to make more of an alien movie out of it. Ridley just came out in an interview yesterday, I believe, saying how he's aware how frustrated the fans were after Prometheus, and he, direct quote, "Wow, okay, I'm wrong." Which is interesting coming from him. Yeah, he's usually really believes his own hype, so he definitely seems to have wanted to make something more geared towards the fans with this one, to be a little more crowd pleasing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this film is a lot more exciting than Prometheus was. We have some way more interesting character dynamics. There's feuds between the crew, but actually feuds that make sense within the story. In Prometheus, those two dudes are, oh, what the hell are you guys getting me in the scenario for? This one, there seem to be more stakes. There seem to be more about survival, and I really like that. It seemed a lot more organic. Also, in terms of like answering questions about creation and bigger questions that Prometheus threw into the mix for the Alien franchise, I think this film does a much better job at addressing them and actually goes in a much more interesting direction than Prometheus ever did.
Yeah. It picks up a lot of the threads from Prometheus and kind of weaves them in a much more satisfying way.
I think that this movie was far less ambitious with the scope that it tried to take on. Realistically, it's a far more simple film than Prometheus.
Prometheus is pretty damn simple.
It's not, because we've discussed about how they ask a lot of questions. You don't get a lot of answers. And
I meant simple as in stupid.
Yeah. But realistically, Prometheus has sustained a conversation between us for 5 years.
Yeah, not about the interesting themes. It's not a theological debate. I'm saying it's a bad movie.
Yes, and we've obviously had enough to argue that it is.
The potential of the film, I think, is what we're mainly arguing about.
Well, for the majority of those 5 years, that was not what you were arguing about. You were arguing that it was a good film. So whether you've changed your opinion now is completely irrelevant.
Okay.
We've already done the Prometheus review. Let's not get into this.
Look, my point is, for me, that this film was a lot simpler in at least the direction it went. It didn't really try to ask too many more questions. It really was, for me, about start to kind of consolidate some answers, get it in a more singular vision.
It was cleaning up Prometheus's mess, I felt.
Big time. And I think
I don't feel like it's cleaning up a mess. It's not cleaning up a mess. It's answering questions.
We all know how we feel about Prometheus. We don't need to debate about that. I'm saying that's what I feel this movie was doing. It was taking
big time
a lot of the things people weren't satisfied with in that Prometheus movie and consolidating them, as you said, and kind of weaving them into this story in a more satisfying way.
And actually improving Prometheus in the process.
Yeah. I don't think watching Prometheus again, it'll make the movie any better as a standalone, but definitely just having memories of the stuff that happened in Prometheus kind of enriches some of the stuff in this.
I think this film did a great job of improving Prometheus and answering a lot of questions, and still leaving it open-ended that there is some stuff to discover for sequels. So I'm kind of like a little bit more on board with Ridley's whole 18 Alien sequel grand vision after seeing this, because it's by far a better film than Prometheus. It knows what it wants to achieve, and it achieves it really well. I think there's some cool stuff with the Xenomorph done in this. I really like that. And that whole sort of mythos of the alien and what that creature is answered in a very satisfying way, I think.
So without getting into any spoilers, what did we all think of the creatures in this film? Because we've seen in the trailers, there's obviously the Xenomorph, there's the Neomorph, I think we're referring to it as, and various other bits and bobs. I thought, me personally, I feel a lot of CGI. It was all CGI for the creatures, as far as I could tell. And it wasn't entirely successful the whole way through, I didn't think. I thought there were a couple of shots where I was like, whenever they were like slimy or reflective, it was very noticeable for a creature that has historically been very heavy. Like it's been a guy in a suit pretty much the whole time, and whenever it's not, it's been very noticeable.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the new designs though. I love the Xenomorph, which is teased in the trailer.
Yeah, that was very much a Silent Hill creature, wasn't it?
Yeah, geez, that thing is freaky. The translucent skin, it was really just a menacing creature. I also really liked that scene, the medbay scene that's teased in the trailer. That was one of the highlights for me.
Yeah, I thought the creature design was really cool. I like how they tried to. It's always a bit of a risk when you try and give a twist on a classic design. I can see why a lot of people might be a bit upset about trying to tweak, but ultimately I really liked how it ended up looking. I mean, again, without getting into too many spoilers, which to be honest is a bit tough, the overall designs were really good, really cool. Particularly the Xenomorph. I thought that was a brave direction to go, and I thought that they really pulled it off.
It was, yeah. It was very different from the Giga sort of designs we're used to from the series. It really did feel much more akin to, as I said, Silent Hill or some Resident Evil thing or something.
One of the big successes this film had over something like Prometheus, I think, was the team. As I've said,
Fucking hell, man.
I just think I'm really impressed with how much better this is.
We shouldn't compare them or something.
I'm all for like watching this
series.
film as its own and not comparing it to Prometheus.
Are you kidding me? There's so many references into this Prometheus, more than I actually expected.
Definitely can use the information from Prometheus, but the idea that, I mean, like, because we obviously at this point quite heavily disagree about how Prometheus.
I'm sorry that I don't like Prometheus, man.
No, that's fine. But I don't need you harping on about it. Because then I'm going to harp on about how it's good, and it's just going to become that.
Well, I think it's a natural comparison, and I don't think you should be so butthurt about it.
All right, well, we can go into that, but as soon as I start defending it, I'm going to get Ben being like, oh, no, let's not go into that.
Okay, well, listen, let me just finish what I wanted to say, and then you can take what you want out of it. There's some beef in this podcast. Yeah, jeez, man. The team actually, there was a scientific exploration to this film that I really liked. They were colonizers, but there was multiple different people in this team that had different functions that I really liked. So there was like the more scientist based people, there was the military people. It was more realistic than the other team in Prometheus, which I don't really know what everyone did. Like the guy shouted that he was a geologist and whatnot, but this team that seemed to be a little more well-rounded, which got me on board with them more so than Prometheus.
Yeah. I think the way that the story played out and the way that the relationships were set up were far more kind of prone to this kind of story. The other one was very, I mean, if we're comparing, the other one was a lot about exploration. So I don't think there were a lot of parameters set on what people were meant to do because they didn't know what they were going to go find. This one seemed to have a very clear prerogative or a very clear mission statement. And they made reference to that quite a few times, is that, we're here to colonize. Like, our priority is to keep people safe. So I thought that added a very cool kind of motivation and cross-motivation with these characters.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I don't think this movie fixed Prometheus' problem of a lot of people who should know better making stupid decisions. I don't think it was as bad as maybe some of the more egregious examples from that film, but there were several points in the story where, and as you said, they just kept saying, no, our mission is to protect the people who are asleep in cryosleep on the ship, but then they'd just kind of say that and do something else. And I'll definitely dig into this in spoilers, but yeah, there were just several points in the film that I would refer to as taking the space helmet off on a new planet.
Yeah. But I mean, to be honest, you'd be pretty hard pressed to find a movie like this that didn't employ that kind of mechanism. Like, if you're actually talking about a science exploration, there's very few things that could possibly happen that wouldn't require us to fuck up in some way. So, I mean, you're going to get those moments in these movies no matter what you do. There are probably less egregious ones. And as you mentioned, Prometheus does have some fairly serious ones. But in terms of the overall spectrum of stupid mistakes, I think this one's probably not too bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I find it much more noticeable in movies that take themselves very seriously, and this is something I discussed with Prometheus. You know, if you're going to watch a B movie, you're not going to harp on about stupid choices. If you're watching a Ridley Scott $200 million sci-fi hard
Epic,
science
yeah.
fiction epic, then it's just going to be more noticeable. It's going to take you out of it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about performances. I think the standout in this is clearly Fassbender. It's his movie.
I did not like his American accent.
Really?
Not into
I
it.
was so impressed with
It
that.
felt a bit too much like the Benedict Cumberbatch working too hard on the R's.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
But I think it worked
It felt-
seamlessly for me.
I was kind of okay with it because, I mean, at the end of the day, he's an android. It's not too out of character, I would say, to sound a little bit, I guess, over articulate, or I didn't need for him to sound like a native.
I think one of the big successes of Fassbender's performance was how he was able to differentiate Walter, who he plays in this film, the android, from David in the previous film, Prometheus. And I really loved that.
Well, I kind of half agree with that because I think he does a very good job of differentiating between them, almost to the point where I think you could get away with it without the accent, which, again, I didn't think was a good accent. So it kind of hurt the character for me.
Better than Idris Elba's. We can agree on that.
Yeah, more consistent.
Yeah. Like I said, it didn't seem like a very kind of lived-in accent.
Which bothered me because as an android, he would have perfect diction. We saw in the Prometheus that David was amazing with linguistics and everything, and he can speak any language. And when he speaks German, it's perfect, which of course because it's Fassbender. But
I think the other standout is Danny McBride.
Yeah,
he was awesome.
Yeah, for a guy that traditionally kind of sticks to comedy roles, he really was probably the shining star in this for me.
Yeah, it's a really different role for him, and that I was a little bit worried about him. Is he going to be the comic relief of this film? And he was just a really well-rounded character, and there were some stakes for him in this, and I think there was a cool performance and a cool character arc.
Yeah.
I really like Catherine Watterson as well, from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them as the lead. She was she's no Sigourney Weaver, but no one is. But I thought she did a solid job, a bit better than Numi in the last.
I think so as well. Unfortunately, they didn't give her a lot to do.
Yeah.
She was oftentimes a bystander, which was a bit of a bummer. But I think her look and when she did have time on screen, she was a really good character.
James Franco as well was really, really good in this.
Oh, man. Is this the time we get into spoilers?
Shortly, I think.
Yeah. But I was going to say this very much is an ensemble cast. I think that it's kind of hard to pick really a lead out of all this.
I don't know. There's a lot of throwaway characters for me, and I think those Fassbender and McBride really stood out to me.
Bunch of Aussies there just to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna die. You're gonna die third.
It was shot in Sydney.
Oh yeah, of course it
So
was.
there's a bunch of Aussies. in it.
Yeah. Okay.
But then again, with a film like this, it's just kind of something that you're not going to be able to avoid. You
Yeah,
can't
no,
give
I wasn't
every
complaining. That was
character
fine.
a
I'm like, and you will die, and you will die, and you will die.
Should we move on to spoilers? I feel like it's...
I think just as a wrap up, I think it looked great. Cool creature designs, improvement on Prometheus, added to Prometheus. I don't think you can argue with that. I know you're taking offense to the fact that I didn't love Prometheus,
No,
but I think there was some really cool stuff added to the mythos that was set up in Prometheus.
I completely understand why people don't like Prometheus.
But do you agree with that?
agree with which
With what
which
I just
statement?
said?
Which statement?
Just
Or
what
the
I
whole
said
thing?
just then. Not about
No,
whether
he's
Which
not
one are
listening.
you talking
He's not
about?
I'm talking about the fact that this film improved and added some cool stuff that was a problem for Prometheus.
No, I don't agree, and that's kind of the whole thing. Like, this is the whole thing. Like,
I give up.
well,
I give up.
For me, Prometheus was never an issue because it didn't answer questions. Like, that was never my qualm with it. So the fact that it answers questions is great in this, but that doesn't fix problems of Prometheus. That just means that Prometheus was a setup to this,
Yeah,
which
sure.
I said that it was from the very beginning.
Sure. Cool.
So gun to your head, which one do you think is better right now? They can change over time or once it settles in. But if you just had to say,
Upon this viewing, I'd say Covenant's probably
Oh, thank God.
better.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see how I feel about this in a week because I can call on movies very quickly.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I liked it quite a lot. It's no Alien. It's no Aliens. So I guess it's part of that other echelon
ensemble.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we literally just saw this, so this is
Yeah,
fresh.
I definitely liked it more than Prometheus, and I guess I'd be happy to see where you could take this from here.
Yeah. That's certainly something we could talk about because where this left off in the spoilers. So should we jump into it?
Yeah, so now we're going to get into some spoilers, guys. So if you haven't seen the film, come back later and check this spoiler section of the review out.
It's gonna get gnarly.
Oh, there's so much to talk about. We had to really dance around a lot of things, and now we can let it rip.
Come out with some, like, stuff happens really quickly in this film. So you got to be really careful about what you talk about and try and think about which characters you're allowed to really elaborate on.
So spoilers from this moment on.
Can we talk about the biggest spoiler right from the beginning?
What
is that?
James Franco.
Oh, man.
How good is that?
Holy shit.
I knew that was going to happen, and it was still... yeah,
I thought he was going to be in there for at least one scene and then go.
No, I'd sort of read that he burns to death in the pod. So,
you'd read
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
That's,
But that's
Well, that
fine.
sucks.
I mean, it was still hilarious. I think that was I don't know. I feel like that was a real misstep casting him in that role.
You might not even known it was James Franco. 'Cause he's in the pod. He's got the head, neoprene thing around his head.
If you didn't, I feel like it'd probably work fine. But then they show him later as well, and I feel like that's one of those casting choices that's just going to take you right out of it very quickly. Because I was just like, that's James Franco burning alive in a pod.
Yeah,
That's
that was
hilarious.
so funny.
And then it's like the most emotional part of the film when she's like crying her eyes out after. It's like, but it's James Franco.
So did you feel that because it was obviously a well-known actor that they killed off immediately, or just because it was actually James Franco? Like the
Specifically,
casting choice?
probably James Franco, yeah, because
Okay.
he's such a high goofball. Like that's it could have been shocking if they'd maybe chosen someone else of that kind of profile, well known. But just as James Franco, I mean, come on, all I could think about was smoking pot when he's burning in that pod there.
It's not something that really took me out of it. I kind of liked how they were willing to kill him off relatively early.
I thought it was hilarious. I could not.
Good, hilarious, bad, hilarious.
Took me
it
out
should
of
not-
her
there's no good
emotional
hilar-
reaction
Yeah,
to her husband dying.
Because it was James Franco.
Just because it was hilarious.
There's no good hilarious of a major character death in a very serious film.
It's just like, why was it his pod and there's just flames? Like, he's like, ah! Like, it was just hilarious on every level. It just seemed ridiculous.
Yeah, fair enough.
But it wasn't, I wasn't holding anything against the film. I just,
no,
it was what it was.
Yeah.
It wasn't
hilarious.
a badly done scene. It wasn't that well done. It was kind of funny and James
that would
Franco,
probably be a bad
James Franco.
scene. That is a bad scene if you're laughing in the beginning of a.
Well, I guess.
Yeah, it's
But
not-
it wasn't a bad scene from it. I was still enjoying the film.
So we've skipped the actual beginning of this film, which is the Prometheus prequel.
Yeah.
The conversation
the-
with
Guy Pearce returning in much less egregious age makeup.
yeah.
So now
And
we
the birth of
finally know why he was cast at that
That's
age.
definitely not the reason.
So for Alien Covenant,
could've-
we could do that opening scene.
Man,
right,
so-
guys? Right?
You could have picked any actor to play that old shoveled wreck in Prometheus and it would have been fine.
God, I'm not kidding when I call that opening scene a Prometheus prequel. I feel like that scene was working so hard to kind of justify some things in Prometheus.
Big time.
Yeah, which
Again,
I guess it wasn't unsuccessful.
I
but-
never found this film trying to justify Prometheus.
No, but
I know I understand what you mean
no, but
by
you,
that.
you know
Like, it
when
makes
David
sense.
wakes up and then asks Wayland, "Who made you?" It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's where he got the idea to go.
Yeah.
It's like Anakin made C-3PO. It's just connecting little dots that didn't need to be. Like, I don't know is that scene needed at all, really?
The one thing I liked about that scene was it was a different way to open up one of these Alien films. I don't think we've ever seen an opening like that,
Yeah.
which I really liked. I thought it was refreshing, and it set up the conversation for what happens later on in the film that I really
it was good
liked.
getting David in there early, I guess.
It was very hammy. It was very forced. Lots of Wagner talk. He walks up to David, a statue of David. I'm going to be called David. It's a little forced.
Call me Michelangelo.
A little forced, a little too on the nose, but I think just the look of the set, the coolness to it, coolness in terms of the
sleek,
look.
There's a sleek look
sleekness,
to it.
yeah,
And
that I liked.
I thought there was certainly aspects of the dialogue between them that I thought were really kind of I don't know if subtle is the right word, but certainly like
Definitely not subtle.
Well, the final conversation between them, or those final few words, which is "bring me some tea," is in and of itself fairly. It's poignant, if not subtle. It's making a point without expressly making the point, which I think is really a sign of good dialogue.
Yeah, it kind of represented the whole conversation through a little gesture of pouring a tea.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, somebody pouring a tea for someone else.
If that entire conversation had been like that, I think that beginning scene would have been far more appropriate.
Yeah.
As it was, you were right. The parts of it just seemed a little bit hammed in, a little less,
a little too philosophical.
Yeah.
So I didn't like first 20 minutes, half an hour, just kind of after that first scene. I wasn't too into it. I felt like I really didn't like how they justified them going to this new planet they discover. I feel like they tried to weave it into the story into Billy Crudup's character, and he was just trying to be a popular captain and do what the people wanted to do.
I think there was an interesting dynamic there.
Yeah.
I think they could have hit that a little harder though, rather than just that one girl being like, I don't want to get in my pod. And he's like, all right, well, let's change this hugely important mission and just go to this planet and walk off from the ship without any spacesuits on. And
I definitely agree with that.
It just felt like thin justification for like what is a huge derailment of their mission.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to go back in the pod.
Well, it was that and the fact that this was a hell of a lot closer, and they made the comment that it was actually more habitable than the place that they were going.
Yes, so but I think the main protagonist's argument was that, hey, we've been setting this up for years.
Yeah.
Are we going to really abandon that? And I do think there could have been just another layer to be like, okay, we're not going to make it to 7 years.
Yeah.
The ship's
or we
fucked.
may not make it.
Yeah.
I think that would have been more interesting. And
this is 3 weeks away. We'll be sweet. Let's go here.
Yeah, I think you're very right in that aspect of saying that a little bit more convincing would have been nice. The part of that really kind of stung for me was, and I don't know why this keeps cropping up in these films, but this conversation of faith, it almost feels like he's trying to be a bit preachy, and I mean Ridley Scott.
I think that weaves in with the whole statue of David and all that kind of crap. It's a little too highbrow for what this film needs to be.
Not even just highbrow. It felt hammed in a movie that didn't really need that aspect. Like I get there's some really cool themes of creation, and there's some really cool themes of man and creator and evil, and all that whole subplot brings those themes to a forefront. What I don't need is someone explicitly saying, I'm a man of faith on this vessel and people think I'm an extremist.
That makes you an extremist nowadays. Yeah, it felt very old man yelling at the sea.
Stop it. The whole idea of faith, I think, can be pulled off. I just don't need a character really spelling it out. I mean, like kind of Interstellar style. I do it because of love. I mean, now that's the weakest part of that film.
Love is a constant.
Yeah. That I don't. I'm so okay with maybe losing some people on the way that aren't quick enough to pick up on those subplots, but that I don't need like this kind of over explanation of those themes.
Yeah.
Just let it sit.
Anyway, when Daniels was sitting there giving him reason after reason why they shouldn't go to this planet, I was just sitting there like, oh, okay, so they're actually addressing the fact that this is a really bad idea, but they didn't really give a good reason why she didn't listen to him so much. I felt it's like she's listening to stuff and I'm like, yes, this is all great.
It was nice to have that perspective because often movies won't do that.
They were really hanging a lampshade on it.
I liked that she had a rationale and the voice of reason in a lot of ways.
But it made it a little frustrating when it was just like, no, we're going anyway.
Yeah.
And because you know what's going to happen there. You know it's going to be bad and they're all going to die. So you're sitting there like, you're making the wrong choice.
Yeah, we have knowledge that they don't. And I do feel like it's almost... I don't know if I'd say that this is really refreshing because it's almost a trope in these kind of films where there's at least one person saying this is a bad idea. Like there's always that person that's going to be right in the end being like, we shouldn't go chasing this.
But it's only like the stoner dude who's like, guys, we shouldn't go. And in this one...
Yeah, I feel like
that horror trope of like, don't go in there, guys. This one seemed to be more... well padded out with some actual empirical evidence.
Yeah, Prometheus' version of that was the schizophrenic geologist who was just like, I'm not meant to be out here.
Yeah.
Well, and Vickers who said that, was pretty cold hard on the quarantine laws, which made sense. At any rate, Yeah, so I mean, for me, my favorite part of this film was when it was, and I almost hesitate to say this, was when it was more like Prometheus than it was like Alien. When it went to the planet and started doing kind of the discovery of the ship, and this is what I thought it did really well. It allowed us to discover the ship, get some like overall world building going, and then they fucked up some of that crew real quick. Like that was not drawn out whatsoever.
I liked the life cycle that happened in this.
Yeah,
Way more. It was way more linear as well. Like Prometheus, and they reference this in this, like the black goo. It's like it's
aggressive.
It's aggressive and it's not consistent. It's random, and they talk about that in this. But that was one of my major problems with Prometheus, was that the life cycle was very unclear. And in this one, I loved. It's like Alien. You got the egg, you got the facehugger Xenomorph. In this one, it was like the spores, and then the little backburster thing, and then that turned into the Neomorph.
Yeah.
That I like that.
What do you think of that backbursting?
That was
sick. So good.
That was so good.
That was grisly.
I was really glad that they, because
let's switch it up. Instead of the front, let's go out the back.
And I feel like that could have so easily become such a shitty scene where, doing something different for different sake. But I thought that they pulled it off really well. Like the timing of it and just the way that the scene progressed, I thought it built immense amount of suspense and horror, and it just really worked very well.
And everyone running around, slipping over and firing into the ceiling.
That was one of my favorite scenes.
It was good stuff, yeah.
It was definitely, I think, probably one of the...
And I think the film not gassed out at that stage, but I wanted to see more. I wanted that thread to keep going, and it kind of stopped. The Xenomorphs were born. I almost wish there'd been like 5 more people that had gone down.
Mm-hmm. Well, they essentially did with the spores. Yeah, well, you can only kill off so many people, really.
Yeah,
I think they had to wait for some to be killed off by those Neomorphs.
After that scene was where the film diverted, and they met David, and he shot up the flare, and that's when the Prometheus
very cool
stuff.
Scene, by the way.
Which one? When they're walking through to the city.
Well, when they're being attacked and he shoots off that scene, I thought that was such a really cool frame up that they had. And I remember seeing it in the ad or in the trailer and thinking, how are they going to pull this off with this kind of hooded figure? I thought it worked out really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then we get introduced to David and see what he's been up to since the last
10
film.
years. Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, with his nice long hair. I really enjoyed pretty much everything with David from then on. I thought it really kind of capitalized on what worked with him in the first film and got a bit more specific with it. And
got very nasal gazing and very philosophical quite quick from that point.
Navel gazing?
So what did I say?
Nasal gazing would be a bit
navel.
Let's check out that flared up nostrils, Sonny.
Yeah, but I mostly enjoyed kind of, when him and Walter kind of get together, it was...
Those conversations.
Yeah, like David's the interesting character in this franchise now, I think, and it definitely looks like moving forward, he's going to be the character we keep following.
Yep.
And this movie really worked him into a place that was very intriguing.
Can we talk about, there's a scene between David and Walter where he's playing the flute. That looked spectacular.
From a technical level, that was seamless, man.
I remember watching this.
Absolutely seamless.
Yeah, I remember watching it and just thinking, this is amazing. Like, I'm trying to pick where one stops and the other begins and kind of like how they would have done it.
There was one bit where one of Fassbender's hands was just popping out from the bottom right of the screen. I was like, that's not your hand.
Yeah.
That's definitely not your hand.
Yeah, this is going to sound so curmudgeonly, but it just felt a little...
So what?
Curmudgeonly.
Curmudgeonly.
Yeah, like it felt a little show-offy. Like, because I was sitting there like, what an amazing effect. I wasn't like, oh man, this character dynamic is so interesting. It's like a lot of that kind of one-shot stuff they're doing nowadays. It's like everyone's trying to outdo each other, but it was very well done and it was a great scene.
Yeah. And going back to what I said earlier about how Fassbender, the performance difference is so nicely done. It's not forced, I didn't think. And the dynamics between those two and what they... what their models kind of represent for themselves. David's more of a creator. Walter's more of a servant. He's about being dutiful. And I really like those conversations And I don't think we've really seen that with amongst androids before. Correct me if I'm wrong in sci-fi.
You mean in this, or in sci-fi?
In sci-fi in general, like, different machines with different
potentially
purposes.
Blade Runner, depending on which theories you follow.
Yeah, I mean that's a big claim, but I just really liked that theme of the androids battling it out, or not battling it out, but having a different viewpoint.
David in this very much felt like, you mentioned Blade Runner, he felt kind of like an extension of the Roy Batty character.
He did, very much so.
Like a continuation of that.
Yeah.
What he might do if he was thrown out into the universe.
What did you think of David as the kind of overall architect of the Xenomorph?
That's one of my biggest problems with the film, because I think you're reducing this creature that for me represented a demonic beast. It wasn't an alien. It was like this otherworldly creature. And that's a lot of it down to H.R. Giger's design. But I think just making it, all come down to David, this android, I liked the open-endedness of not knowing where they come from, and just getting the sort of spelled out in that way. I don't think it was unsuccessful, but for me, as a fan of the Alien and a fan of the franchise, I wasn't super, super satisfied.
I believe that there's probably another version of this out there somewhere. Not physically out there, but like that could have been, where he's not the creator of the Xenomorph, that would have worked better. It's kind of the way that I look at it. I'm not necessarily disappointed that this is the way that they went, but I feel like there's probably a better version out there.
This is interesting. I actually quite liked it. I don't know. Maybe I'm in two minds about it. I think I really separate the original 4 Alien movies from Prometheus onwards. Mm-hmm. So I'm never going to go back and watch the original Alien and be like, oh, David created that. So I can just have that separate in my mind. But in this franchise, I like the idea that David's come in. He's taken this ridiculous black goo from Prometheus and refined it into something a little more consistent.
Yeah.
And I kind of like how this movie in general really streamlines that the Xenomorph and that whole life cycle.
I mean, and don't get me wrong, I like the way that you've described it is, and I totally agree with that. I like the way that he went about creating the Xenomorph. My reservation is far more kind of on your side, George, about knowing that from the Alien 1 kind of stance, thinking, oh, this has been created by David, as opposed to that this is, something that's evolved on some like disastrous planet for millions of years type thing, and it's just become this, sightless beast.
Yeah. That
for me kind of held a little bit more weight behind it.
Yeah. I think the unknown is the power of the Xenomorph. I think, in that first Alien film, Ridley Scott barely shows it. It's always in the dark, it's in the shadows, it's flash cuts. And that's that's where the Xenomorph is super effective, where you don't know, it's lurking in the background. We don't have all the information on it. But I think that's a good way to look at it. And I'm going to take a leaf out of your book, Benny. And I think if you do separate them, I think there was some really cool stuff with David, and I like his zoological Darwinian escapades in this. His endeavors.
Mad scientist type.
Yeah, well, I suppose
that.
Now we jump into what happened to Shaw from the last film.
Oh, man. That was brutal.
Because we had our little prologue that we mentioned earlier where it shows her repairing David and them traveling off to the little engineer planet.
And he references that.
Yeah, and now we see that he turned her into a lab project and dissected her.
This is the thing that I wasn't quite clear on, and I don't know whether they addressed it, and maybe I just missed it. Did he kill her?
He killed her, yeah.
Okay, for what purpose, though?
To house.
To experiment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wasn't it housing a chest burster or something?
Well,
it looked to me like he just dissected her.
Okay.
Yeah, he never really mentions what actually happened to her, because he was obviously, I think the theme along it was that he was in love with her. Although I'm not entirely sure what he.
I think it was like a love in that she had kind of in his eyes given herself up for science.
I didn't
like
quite get that.
Love.
For me it was very much. I don't think he really knew what love was, but I think what he thought love was is how he felt towards Elizabeth, because he didn't expressly say that he killed her. That for me wasn't a definite. Like you definitely know that he turned her into a lab experiment at some point, but I wonder what prompted that. Whether he did.
Did he definitely not say it? Because
I'm not sure.
When he's confronted by Walter, it was Walter, wasn't it, or was it Daniel?
She didn't die in the crash.
Yeah, I can't remember the explicit wording there, but I definitely walked away with the notion that he killed her.
I certainly open-ended, but leaning towards the fact that he at least led her to her death.
I didn't like that prologue. I'm so glad it wasn't in the film.
Yeah.
Because when we were doing little flashbacks for what happened with David, I'm like, but don't show that bit. I'm glad, like he just said, she repaired me. That's all we need to know about why he's walking around and not just a head.
The pre-marketing was well done because it gave you stuff that would have, I felt, not belonged in the actual film, but is good information to have. Just
I don't think you needed it at all. He just says, she repaired me. That's it. That was better. That was better than the scene of it actually happening. That was weird.
What did you guys think about him destroying all the engineers with the bombs?
I thought that was really a very quick way to clean up Prometheus. Because the whole ending of Prometheus was, we're going to find the engineers and have a little chat with them. And this was just like, no, we're just going to kill them all right now and move on. Yeah. And I like that.
Once again, I didn't... I'm sounding like a broken record. I don't think that was cleaning up Prometheus. I think it fed well from Prometheus. And I'm now interested to see really whether that's it for engineers for the rest of the series, whether that'll get explored more.
That's
I like this whole kind of idea of exploration and building where we're from and the kind of the mythos of that universe.
You like the engineers in this one, didn't you, Georgie?
Man, I don't call them engineers anymore. They're just grey people. Like
that's all engineers were.
No, they weren't. They had had a look. They like in the behind the scenes features, they talk about how the design of the engineers is taken from Elvis Presley, the Statue of Liberty, and the Statue of David.
You can see that very
much.
It's
got that sculpted look. And these ones are just like, hey, it's the engineers and we're grey and we look like people but we're grey and we're engineers. And I was like, what the fuck are these Roman space people doing? Like, they're literally congregated in this circle and he wipes them out in one go. Like, I don't know. There was a lot of stuff with that scene that it didn't necessarily bother me, but I was just like, oh, okay, you're trying to fix something. I don't know how successful you're being.
See, I thought it was very just quick, like, let's sweep it under the rug, forget about the engineers, they're gone, they're all dead now, it's fine.
It's like the engineers, like they'll never turn up again. Imagine if they never turn up again. That would be so funny, and that would be my final fuck you Prometheus to you, Connor.
I honestly don't think they will.
Well, no, that's more of a fuck you to you because you're the one complaining that it doesn't have any answers. I'm fine with no answers.
Yeah, because they got no answers, so fucking destroy them.
Kill them all. They can't answer shit.
I thought it was an interesting way to go, and I remember mentioning this when we were talking about Prometheus. I don't think a story in which you go to a world of engineers will create a good alien story. I just don't think that that's a good idea. So I'm really glad that when they got there, that there was nothing about them meeting the engineers. They just outright killed them, and that kind of progressed the plot from there. Because I thought it would have been such I think it'd been so anticlimactic to then sit down with engineers and just. I don't even know how that would go. Like, what are they going to do? Ask them why and then go through a monologue? I just think that's so unsatisfactory.
No, I definitely agree. With that. It's a good way to not put yourself in a corner in terms of a narrative and a storytelling, world building.
I like finding little clues to civilizations, and even if those clues raise a lot of questions and only answer a few, I still like that. It kind of keeps my curiosity going. It keeps the building going, and I'm okay with that. So I think that was, for me, that was a good way to go about it. I didn't mind the gray Roman people. That just seems a little bit, nitpicky to me. But I was fine with that. It was a quick scene, and I thought it was visually cool how those bombs deployed. I thought that was an interesting, like, visually,
interesting
I think so as well,
thing to go out.
It was consistent with what we know of the black goo, which is that it does whatever it wants. So that was.
Yeah, and I mean, they kind of, if there's one thing that they, quote unquote, fixed, it was to really kind of put to bed what that black goo was with that little monologue where he just goes, it's fairly unpredictable about the way that it manifests, but all we know is that it's really aggressive and it just wipes out fucking the meat of a planet.
It doesn't make sense and it makes people make really bad choices.
Yeah. Listen, it was, I'm glad that they put something towards answering what that thing does.
Yeah.
Okay. Even if it was as thin as that, it does whatever it wants. It does whatever the fuck it wants. He didn't
really say that. He said, it's fairly unpredictable in the way
it's
that it
wacky
manifests.
Veiny goo.
But it's aggressive and it fucks up meat. And that to me, yeah, that's what it is, quote. But that to me was like, oh yeah, that seems to actually make sense. I'm okay with that.
So anyway, in this midsection here, I love everything with the Neomorph,
Same.
the Silent Hill monster, Pyramid Head guy.
How good is that scene in the cornfield? That's one of my favorite scenes.
That was cool. I was more
Before
referring
David shows
to
up.
Yeah.
to when David is
Blowing on
breathing
the-
on its nostrils.
Yeah.
That was really cool, and awesome design. The way it stands upright is just chilling.
Loved
Yeah,
it.
I was it was a bit weirded out by how easy it was to kill.
I think we've kind of seen though over these films that xenomorphs are very susceptible to bullets.
Yep.
Like
Well, yeah.
you watch Aliens and they go down like bitches.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about the Xenomorph.
Yes, I wanted to follow on with that
Because I think we all loved the Neomorph. I think we were all on board with that.
was the idea that the Neomorph turns into the Xenomorph. That one did, didn't it?
No, he went
one-
straight facehugger.
Sorry.
The Xenomorph came out of a facehugger from the captain
Right. So
in a very weird scene where it's standing up and like mimicking David.
that was odd.
David puts his arms up and it's like,
strange
I
shit.
love you, Daddy.
Yeah, that was the one moment where I was like, way to make a Xenomorph not scary.
What did you guys think about actually seeing the rapid growth of the Xenomorph on screen? Because typically the chest burster comes off and it fucks off for a few minutes. The next time you
Comes
see
back,
this
yeah.
fuck off Xenomorph. In this
Yeah.
one, it was like, whoa, that thing's growing. It's growing right now in
Right
front of
before
me.
your eyes, yeah. I think that was very
It's
justified from what we've seen
interesting.
in the series. They've
Interesting.
always grown very quickly off screen, so it makes sense that we've finally seen it happen.
I wasn't sure. Initially, I was like, oh, okay, we're seeing this for the first time. I wasn't sure how on board I was with it, but I think I like it. I think I do. I think that's my final judgment.
Fantastic.
I was just really happy to finally see a facehugger run. I thought that was so cool.
Oh, yeah, finally.
Finally.
You know what? Actually, that facehugger moved pretty swift. I like the way they animated it.
Yeah.
When it
The
was
way it was
crawling
cut
on
even.
that wall.
Although that being said, I hated everything from Billy Crudup putting his gun up on David to him getting
Oh, you knew he was
face
fucked.
hugged.
Yeah.
But it was just it just
Yeah.
felt so fucking dumb.
He
He
walked-
just
he walks
follows
in
him.
it,
He goes off alone with
Yeah.
this android who's just so clearly evil.
Yeah.
And then he just goes into this room full of all these eggs
Yeah.
and he sticks his head in the egg. It's like that's the easiest job a facehugger has ever had.
Yeah. I reckon
Yeah.
David's just standing there like, holy shit, this is so
Yeah.
easy. Like,
You deserve
look
to be wiped
inside,
out.
I know,
Check it
like,
out.
He's fucking with him at that point. He's like, I just look inside voluntarily,
Just
please.
do it. Holy shit, he's doing it. Like him and his little
Wow.
like, crazy buddies. They're like, oh my god, he's gonna do it.
Yeah, that was bugging me.
But the Xenomorph itself, I think they showed it too much in the open. I like the Xenomorph being in the shadows, lurking. So that was a little complaint for me, but it's a very minor complaint.
Yeah.
And one of my big problems with the trailer was the Xenomorph smashing its head
Yeah.
on the glass. And that whole scene was fucking awesome. I loved it.
That was the best Xenomorph scene, I think. I didn't like the climax really at all.
No.
Up on the ship or
Yeah.
Yeah, I
with
thought
the
it
Xenomorph.
peaked on that other action sequence.
It certainly did. I think that the shower scene was a bit.
That seemed like it should have been further in the middle of the movie, not right at the
it
end,
did.
like bookending
You
it.
feel like it was
it's
picking
this-
up momentum again, and you're like, oh, this feels weird.
That
Like,
scene was the second best Xenomorph kills someone in the shower scene in the Alien franchise.
Is the other one in Alien 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With
That's so
what's his
good.
face from Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
awesome.
Epic.
Looks great, yeah.
Epic.
Just anything with the Xenomorph in this one, it just didn't pack the same punch as the man in the suit version does for me.
Yep.
I feel like part of that is because it is. I mean, you're talking about it being out in the open. I wonder whether they wanted to kind of move away from the way that it's traditionally been shown, kind of in corridors, in the shadows and stuff, because it was very effective, classically done like that. But I feel like it would have been treading old kind of ways a little bit too.
And we all know what a Xenomorph looks like now. We've seen thousands of them over the years.
I don't think you can
They
make a
couldn't have done
Xenomorph
that, yeah.
that scary anymore. Like it's just not. I think we all kind of want to chase that original high, and it's just not going to be there.
I'm not sure. I mean, it's a somewhat valid argument, but listen, I think he did an amazing job, and I did really like the look of it. It was back to that original Xenomorph look.
Well, it looked to me to be a lot lankier and double jointed. I love the design.
But that's what it's always looked like that. But when
it's
you
usually
look
been
at
hunched
Aliens,
more.
it's always been crunched down. This one
Yeah.
seems to be a lot more.
It's always meant to look like that, but a guy in a suit can't look like that.
Yeah.
Unless you get Doug Jones, maybe. But yeah. When you look at the actual guy standing there in the suit, it looks very chunky.
Yep. One other thing that I didn't really touch upon that I loved was the nature of how these ships landed. That initial flight down to the planet's surface and Danny McBride piloting that ship at the end. Man, I felt like these guys were wrestling with this ship, trying to pilot it. I just thought those scenes were really well directed, and I loved it. I just felt the visceral nature of wrestling with the weather.
Yeah, certainly more than Idris Elba, because I felt like that was the one of the things that was lacking from those scenes. Like I liked his character. And we mentioned this when we talked about Prometheus, that it like running into the big croissant. That's an awesome scene. But this one certainly gave a lot more gravity and a lot more kind of concern and all that to those scenes.
One little niggle adjacent to that. So Danny McBride is trying to get the ship closer down to the planet, and the other two guys are like, "No, don't." And
Okay,
then
you
next
wanted to talk
time,
about this, yeah.
next time we see them, he's like, "I'm doing it anyway," and they're like, "All right, let's do it." Did I miss something there? Because remember, he puts his code in, it needs another code for them to do it.
Yeah,
and they're just like, "Yeah."
The
let's
objection
do it.
was when they didn't know that they were in trouble, and I think it's when he learned that his wife was dead, and the others needed him immediately. That's kind of what tipped them over. It was still obviously
didn't him
not a
learning
good
that information
decision.
come after they went down.
No,
Doing that.
Well, when he went down to 80,
Yeah, and then they got communication. It was like, now we're going to 40.
but I think he went down to 40 after he learned that shit had really fucked up.
Okay.
I believe.
I'm not
I
sure
might
about
not be
that.
remembering this correctly.
It did seem a little...
Because I just remember thinking there had been no justification at that point.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
felt-
I feel like they talk after that bit.
I thought it was very similar feeling to you when they finally went, all right, we're going to go down. I kind of felt, oh, where was the switching point for you? Him and his wife dying and all that kind of stuff didn't quite convince me that was a good enough reason for them to go down. It was necessary to the plot, but apart from that, I didn't feel like
Just
there was
after
really
all the harping on about we got to look after these 2,000 people,
and
it's
then they
like,
just did it anyways.
it's small potatoes, man. There's a couple of people on that
Yep.
planet. Just
Yeah.
fucking fly off to your other place
Agreed.
now.
Exactly.
Leave them there. Forget about them. They can fend for themselves.
I wanted to touch on one quick thing that we talked about before we got into spoilers that I mentioned I'd come back to, which was Walter's accent, where you said that someone that was so good with diction should have been able to kind of mimic a more native accent. They had an entire conversation about how they didn't want them blending in too much. They felt too human. So in a very interesting kind of way that makes sense. And there's a bit of a problem within movies where you'll never know whether he did that on purpose or not. This could be
didn't
like
do it
me
on
just
purpose.
finding an excuse for...
That's reaching, my friend. That's reaching.
I know, because it actually makes perfect sense. Like, he very plainly spelt out that the previous iterations of the androids were too close and people got very uncomfortable. So for him to be a little bit more machine-like in the way that he speaks, or a little less native than that, would make sense. But my problem is there's no way to know whether that was something clever thought up by Ridley or David.
I know that it wasn't.
Well, how do
I
you know
know
that?
for a
Sorry,
fact.
how do you know that? For
I
a
will
fact?
not reveal my sources.
Yeah, bullshit. I'm gonna call bullshit.
Not on air. I'll tell you after.
I liked his
Yeah.
accent.
I thought it was fine. Yeah, I'm just saying that if you don't think it's native, that there's an explanation for that.
All
in
right,
the
so
film.
I'm a little confused by the morphology in this film. I think it does a lot of good work in streamlining the life cycle, as we said. So the people get the spores or whatever in their face and their blood, and then they spit out one of those neomorph ones.
Yep.
Yes.
David has done all this work to create the eggs and the chest bursters and whatnot.
Yes.
Then with Demian Bashir later, the guy with the burnt face, when he injected him, I got the impression he was
Injecting with the
spores or
spores.
something.
I thought that
But
the
then
face
he
hugger got
had a
him.
regular xenomorph.
I thought
out of him.
I thought the face hugger got him.
Yeah, I thought the face hugger got him as well.
It doesn't quite make sense with timing because I feel like
Yeah, because then he cut off his face and that's how he got burnt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I guess that's it.
It just seems like a bit of a longer life cycle than, for example, the Captain, which it seemed to happen a lot sooner. But that was how I envisioned that the facehugger did end up.
I
getting
guess
him.
I just very much got the impression that David did that to him on the ship there when he injected him, which I think would be better than, oh no, he just didn't get the facehugger off in time. But I guess that makes more sense.
Then it doesn't make sense as to why a Xenomorph would come out.
But that's consistent with what we've seen in Prometheus. In that stuff just kind of happens like that sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a suitable explanation.
Yeah. I think as we've said, this is the first time we've seen it. I think we literally came straight back and recorded this.
Yeah.
So
this is a new thing for us. Like we would normally have at least
a couple days,
a day or two to kind of mull over a film, or at least a couple hours.
Normally, George and Connor would go off on a date and watch the movie alone, and I'd have to see it by myself.
Someone's a bit better.
Mate, you couldn't even handle going to see this one by yourself, could you?
So I think that it'll be interesting to see how
in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, even in a couple of days.
Yeah.
My opinion rarely goes up on films, but it'll be interesting to see.
We can talk about it on our top 8 show, which we'll be recording in a couple of days.
Yeah,
so
we'll
see how we
report
go
soon.
with it.
And so, how do you guys like the Walter David twist?
Yeah,
the old rug pull.
I mean,
I knew
you saw it a million
was,
miles away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we've seen it so many times,
but it took because the entire rest of the film was the characters not knowing that, so it was a bit odd that they didn't make the twist explicit. It still feels like it was meant to be a twist, but it was very clear.
Yeah, I feel like they should have just let the audience in on the fact that wasn't Walter. Like I know they did an awful lot to make it out that it was.
Because it's set up like a twist, and then
yes,
and then there's that bit where he looks back, but just before he runs off to the ship, and it feels out of character for David. Like it feels like David wouldn't be looking back, like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I had to kill you, my brother." But
yeah, they do an awful lot to make it seem as though that is actually Walter, like helping them with the Xenomorph and doing all this kind of stuff. It just seems like they were putting in an awful lot of effort.
It's
to
definitely
make that
a twist. That's how it's meant to be.
But it's not.
Received, but I think,
and this goes back to how much I didn't like the climax at all. Just the Xenomorph stuff back on the ship. I like the very ending a lot, but everything in between. Because why was Walter? Why was he helping them kill the Xenomorph at that point?
Because I think that what he actually wanted was access to the cargo. I don't think he intended on having the Xenomorph up on the thing yet.
Right.
I think he wanted them all asleep, and then he wanted to be doing these
hatchlings.
experiments and in peace.
Yeah, fair enough.
The final, and this is probably one of the last things I'll say about this, is that final scene where she realizes that it's him. I thought it was just a hair off. I thought that it should have been.
I kind of like that.
I feel like a lot of
like
people
a
are going to
sense of
come out of
dread.
that and be like, "Wait, why did she realize?"
No, like the theory behind it makes sense. It's not that it was off in terms of continuity or anything. It was more the fact that I would have liked it to be a little bit more impactful. Like I would have liked to have been hit with it.
Exactly. No, that's what I'm
and that
saying.
could have been something a little bit more subtle. So, or just I would have even been happier with kind of that last scene being like, a bit of a pause and then yes, and then like her not quite realizing, but her kind of looking at him like without kind of going spazzing out and being like, "Let me out." I just thought if that was a little more subtle, would have had a lot more impact.
No, I like the way she freaked out. It reminded me of the ending of Life.
I thought Life was a lot more impactful, just because even though you could see it a mile away, the way that it was set up was a lot more kind of conducive to that type of reaction.
Yeah, I like the twist. I don't think it worked very well though, in the way it was intended to.
Yeah.
I think that's it, guys.
Yeah. Overall,
improvement on Prometheus, and I'm way more. I'm looking forward to the next one. This is probably in the top 50% of Alien films for me. And that's not saying much, but I'll openly. I think this is better than Resurrection. It's better than Prometheus. Better than Requiem. So that's I liked it a lot.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I really enjoyed this film. I thought that it was a really good follow-up to Prometheus. I thought that it answered a lot of the questions that we wanted answers to. I'm very interested to see where they will go from here. I don't know how they're going to do another Alien type film. from where they've gone. So I'm very, very curious as to where to go from here.
I reckon they should do the Aliens to Alien version, just have an all-out action movie, thousands of xenomorphs everywhere. I don't know. Yeah, so I like this film. We'll report in later about how I feel. I don't think any of these movies are ever going to have the same place in my heart as the first 4 Alien films do. I just don't think that's possible. That's still just nostalgia, really.
Yeah.
So that's how it has to be. But definitely better than Prometheus. But on that note of where the franchise is going to go, Ridley just came out in that interview I mentioned earlier as well. They asked him if he's going to be making still his 2 Alien movies a year for the next 20 years. His response was, I don't know, maybe 2 more or maybe 1 more. I don't know.
Wow, really?
So, yeah,
I don't even
it's
know
a bit
how he's gonna-
uncertain
That's
at
a
this
hype
point.
machine.
That's how you do it.
Planting the seed.
Well, it sounds like he actually did take to heart the reaction to Prometheus, and this one's getting sort of a mixed response as well. Maybe he's just going to give up soon.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
But we'll be there to review
We'll be there.
Alien Awakening.
If to be honest, if he brings out an alien movie every couple of years, I'm not going to complain. To be honest.
I'll see it and then I'll complain.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it, guys. That's our Alien Covenant review. Please check us out on iTunes, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram at The Podcast Strikes Back. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Connor,
Bye bye.
Benny,
See ya.
catch you later, guys. Thanks.